Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back and what a day it is to be a Fulham fan. A 3-2 victory over Liverpool at Craven Cottage in the sunshine. Here to discuss it all, we have Dave at Crave. How are we going, Dave? Good to see your smiling face today.
Oh, it's great to see you too, Jack. It's been a while since I've been on the post-game review show, and I'm just delighted to be back, especially after yesterday afternoon. What a game. What a game. What a performance. Just can't wait to talk about it.
And also joining us, we have Elton. Dad, how are we going tonight?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. I'm super excited to talk about this. I could reel off all the things I'm excited about, but I'm going to save it, and I'm going to vomit it all at you over the next hour.
Well, this is one vomit I will be more than happy to accept. Not many times I'd say that, but this is the one. It was just a brilliant victory, and it's such a contrast to the game against Arsenal where we went 5 at the back. It just felt like we were never really in it. This was just the absolute flip side where right from the off, we looked like we were going to actually pull this one off. We dominated the first 20 minutes, and look, we'll get into the crux of the game itself, but let's look at the lineup right from the start. Dave, I'll throw to you first. On After Dark, you guys discussed the 5 at the back and how that all sort of panned out against Arsenal. Yeah. Interesting watching the coverage here in Australia. Beforehand, they were saying that Fulham have gone with 5 at the back again, and that Cess was going to be playing right back with Robinson at left wing back and Castagna shifting to the middle. But as a seasoned Fulham fan and a follower this season, it was pretty clear Cess is going to be playing on the wing. Was it good to see Silva returning to 4 at the back after another failed 5 at the back experiment?
Yeah, it was. We did talk about that on After Dark. You're right. We talked about, I guess, how we were a little bit blunt in that first half against Arsenal with that system, and we needed to do something different, and we needed to be brave. And going at home on a nice summer's day, there were players that deserved an opportunity, and my God, they took it. So yeah, I was delighted to see Muniz get the start up front. He looks to be the form striker at the moment, and I was delighted to see Cess get an opportunity on the wing there, particularly given the goals he's been involved with over the last few games. I do apologise, my dog's having a bit of a meltdown here. I know I have to let her out in a minute, but we'll try and get through it.
She heard you say Muniz, that's all. She got excited.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she's just barking at a leaf or something, I think, outside. So I do apologise. But yeah, no, it was really positive team lineup, I thought. And yeah, I was pleased to see, in particular, Muniz and Cess for sure.
Dad, I'll throw to you. We were talking about it pre-game as well. As soon as the lineup came out, it was, a few changes from the Arsenal game, but quite interesting ones. What were your thoughts on the lineup for this one?
Well, same as Dave at Crave, to be honest. I've been whinging and campaigning for Muniz to start. I understand some of the problems around all of that, but I was delighted to see him start, and equally delighted to see Cess get named in the starting lineup. That's a wonderful early start to the afternoon. Really, really happy to see Kenny Tete on the bench. It would have been a dream if Kenny was fit and ready to have started yesterday. Obviously impossible, but so good to have him back. What would have been, just capped it off, would have been to see Harry Wilson up and about and ready and being part of proceedings, but obviously not to be. But yeah, I thought it was. I was wondering if Silva was going to actually return to Raul as starting on Saturday, and I was really hoping that wasn't going to be the case. And I was so pleased that Muniz actually repaid the gaffer the favour. Obviously, he scored on Monday night. He also missed one, and I felt so sorry for the guy. in that I think it's just a product of simply not playing enough regular football and not getting enough minutes. You can't tell me that he hasn't got that in his locker to put that away, because he is pretty composed in front of goal. So yeah, I was just very happy to see AP be given the nod as well in the 10, and I thought he did a really good job in the first half, didn't he, Dave?
Yeah, and you know what? I think it would be remiss not to mention Mr. Kenny Tete returning to the bench as well. I mean, that was a big boost, I thought, and that's going to really help us in the run-in. But yeah, it was there was some. Oh, it was great performances all over the park, really, wasn't there? It's very hard to pick out players who had a poor game. Yeah, it was one of those days where everything went right, particularly in that little 15-minute spell that just kind of rocked our world yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about all the changes, but I just want to sort of drill home the fact that I'm really just pleased that Cess got his chance. He's been really impressive the last couple of games. Every time he's come off the bench, he's had an impact. And I think, let's be honest, at the start of the season, we signed Cess. It was great because it was a free, so it's kind of low risk. It was great because of nostalgic reasons. We were just happy to have our boy home. But I don't think anyone really expected him to have much of an impact. I think we were probably looking at, not to, get stuck into anyone in particular, but we were looking at him having the kind of impact you expect from someone like a Harrison Reed maybe, or a Tom Cairney off the bench, or a Diop, where it's solid but not really outstanding and not really pushing for a first team place. But he's come on leaps and bounds, and we're starting to see that Cess from from when we sold him, when he was pushing forward. Every time he got the ball, it was exciting. We felt like something was going to happen. And he really has pushed hard, similar to how Harry Wilson did at the start of the season, where he just kept performing off the bench to the point where he forced Marco's hand, and Marco had to put him into the team. And I think Cess has done the same thing and repaid that with the opening goal. Well, not the opening goal, but Fulham's goal. Let's talk about the first sort of 15, 20 minutes, though, Dave. Fulham came out of the blocks, and I think Marco against, in the pre-post game from Arsenal, sort of lambasted the fact that we continuously started slowly in games. But this Fulham team started incredibly well, probably the best I've seen us start all season, looking assured in possession, on top of Liverpool completely. Really good to see us get off to a really positive start in this one, Dave.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, Marco is a big fan of the quick start, isn't he? So, we came out the blocks. It looked all positive, and of course, Liverpool are always going to be a threat on the counter. They've got just incredible players, but yeah, we came out with the right intent, as you'd kind of expect Fulham to do. But yeah, things just felt like they were clicking. It really felt they were clicking. If I go back 2 weeks ago and think back to the Palace game, or 1 week ago, we weren't clicking like we were yesterday at the start of the game. So I think that was really encouraging. The players looked up for it. They were clearly, motivated to kind of get a result after a bad week. And I think that kind of set the scene for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think it's easy to,
like you said, Liverpool. Yeah, go on. Sorry,
Jack. Yeah, I think it's easy to look at just the ball in the back of the net over those first 37 minutes or so, but actually you have to recognise and credit Pereira and Muniz particularly for their press, which I think really rattled Liverpool, rattled the keeper, put the keeper under a lot of pressure. Wasn't good with the ball at his feet, and I think that really set the tone for how we were going to behave in that first 15 or 20 minutes in particular. And I think it was the kind of reaction that you'd expect Silva to be demanding. And
yeah, no, 100%. I think if we look at the opening goal for Liverpool, let's sort of analyse that. It's against the run of play, which is not something you'd really expect to say when you play against a team like Liverpool. Usually they're dominating from the first minute of the game onwards, but Fulham were in fairly good control. And look, the opening goal, it's a bit of a mistake in my mind from Sander Berge here. I think he has to commit the foul. He has probably 2 or 3 nibbles on McAllister, and then doesn't give up as such, but just sort of lets him get into that space. And we've seen McAllister do it against us before. He's pulled the trigger from a distance. It's an absolute bullet. Leno actually puts in a decent dive, but couldn't get close to it. Dave, it's got to be down to a Berger mistake there. If you're going to be kind of harsh on this one, Sander Berge has to do better.
Yeah. No, it was a shame because he'd started the game pretty well and generally had a good game yesterday. I mean, really impressive at times, but it was a mistake. As it happened, I shouted, "Foul him!" From my seat, and unfortunately he didn't. And the shot came in, and it didn't look like it went right in the corner either. So it looked just, I wasn't sure. No. Was it kind of another one where perhaps Leno maybe could have done a bit better? It's hard to say.
It sort of goes past his fingertips, but it's hit so hard and it's rising that I think even if Leno had got a fingertip to it, it's probably bursting through his fingertips and still ending up in the back of the net. It was a great strike, and the big problem there was he was just in a lot of space from 25 yards, and when you can hit them as well as McAllister can, it's dangerous to give him that kind of space. And look, I agree with you as well. I think Berger actually throughout the game was really, really good. That was his only mistake for pretty much the whole afternoon. I think he gave the ball away one other time, but really he had a very good game. And look, that's something that is really easily solvable. It's something where you say, look, next time you take the foul, you get the yellow card. And I think we saw it. I'm trying to remember the game it was, where I think we had Kearney and Wilson and someone ran through us and we should have fouled them and they scored a goal. I can't remember off the top of my head who it was against, but it's happened a couple of times this season where we've just not had the smarts to make that professional foul and just accept the yellow card, because you need to break up the play sometimes. You can't allow players of that quality to just breeze through your midfield and have a free shot on goal because you get punished.
You're right, actually, Jack.
And against a team like Liverpool, we did get punished.
We did. You're right.
It's something that can be fixed.
I remember it happened with Delap for Ipswich really early on in the season, where he kind of ran through the middle of the pitch and scored. And it was kind of a similar goal, really. So it is an area in which we do tend to concede. We do tend to concede from shots outside the box, from long range, and sometimes we're guilty of letting players, as you say, run through without putting them under pressure or getting a tackle in just to break up the move. Marco actually mentioned it in his press conference after the game, that he said we should have taken professional fouls in those moments. And he's right. We should have. We were too soft in that moment. And as I said, I don't want to be too harsh on Berger because he had a great game generally. It was a fantastic performance, but he really does need to be a bit more street smart in that situation.
100%.
You can't make a nice guy
is a player
not a
who
nice
is street
guy,
smart as well.
Oh yeah, could be
but I do think Berger, he seems to be one of our smarter players in the midfield. He seems to actually make those tackles more often than not, but for some reason just let this one slide past. And maybe it's because he had a couple of nibbles at McAllister and then sort of gave up on it after a while. But it's interesting, he's skipping miles ahead, but there was another point sort of late in the game where Smith Rowe, who does have the smarts, I can't remember who it was who was going forward, but Smith Rowe just held onto his shirt and just pulled him back, took the yellow card. But that's exactly what we wanted from Berger in that situation, just to go. And because it's early in the game, sometimes you actually get away with those and don't pick up a yellow card for it, especially if it's your first infringement. So, look, it's something to learn from. But, Dad, you go 1-0 down against Liverpool, you often feel like that's game, set, and match. It did feel a fraction like that after dominating that early period and then conceding. But, geez, Fulham bounced back. And what a goal it is from Ryan Sessegnon. Really good build-up play. Pereira swings the ball into the box, and it's poorly cleared by the defence. Muniz, again, sort of just making a bit of a menace of himself up front and causing the header to sort of skew out. But Sess first time hit past the keeper at the near post. What a goal that is, and what a way to bounce back.
Yeah, sure. And as the Discord absolutely lit up at that point, and everyone I guess, had what we've been waiting for a very, very long time. And you can't teach that stuff, can you? You just can't teach it. And it's what we love about Sessegnon. He's got some instincts, and he's always looking. He's very opportunistic around the box, and we have really suffered from that. I mean, Wilson's the only guy who was doing a bit of that and doing it very, very well early in the season. Of course, we've lost him for a very, very long time, and we've really missed that. We've had, different kinds of quality from our wingers, but not that particular quality. And it was beautifully taken. If you look, I watched that replay a few times, probably quite a few times, and if you look how quickly he jumps onto that and puts it away, I mean, obviously he gets. Yeah, no, it brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I can't say anything negative about it at all. Did it all perfectly.
He did.
And just
I thought
that's the kind of player that you want scoring that goal as well. Go on, Dave.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you mentioned it at the start, but I think injuries have given Cess this opportunity on the wing, right? I don't think he would have got these opportunities had Wilson been fit, had Nelson been fit, and I think in Silva's mind he was very much a left back stroke left wing back. But what we're seeing, not just yesterday, but over the last few games, is it's like Cess of 5-6 years ago. He's confident. But what really impresses me most about him is just his composure in the box. He's just so composed. Every time he gets the ball in the box, he doesn't get flustered. He always seems to kind of find the right pass, take his time. It almost slows down for him when he gets into the box. It's very rare to see that in a player. I think it's a really rare quality. And I wouldn't say Cess has got, like the quickest player or the most skillful player or the strongest player, but that is a really rare kind of unique part of his game, I think. And that time took it first time. Other times he'll take a touch and find the player. And it's just really what a great asset to have. He's a huge goal threat for us now. He's getting goals and assists. And if he keeps this form going, he's going to make that position his own. And I'm all for it. It's really exciting. And I just thought it was a great finish yesterday. Really instinctive. It was kind of at a funny height. It kind of bounced up by his knee. So he had to kind of jump to get over it. But my God, he just put it away, no problem. So just, it was a thrilling moment and a kind of, we were all just delighted that he took his chance.
And look, you've got a 24-year-old English player who's coming back into form. You look at what that does to the squad as well, because we obviously had Iwobi and Cess starting on the wings. On the bench, it's a really strong bench when you look at it. We've got Willian, Smith Rowe and Adama to come off the bench. Like, if we started a game with those three, you'd actually probably be pretty happy with the lineup. So the fact that we've actually got someone like Cess performing to that level now means that we have an even stronger depth to the club. And we've still got Wilson and Reece Nelson both out injured as well. So I remember at the start of the season thinking, geez, we're a little bit short on the wings here. We didn't have Willian. Cess was a bit of an unknown. Reece Nelson was a bit unknown. Wilson, over the last couple of years, I think has probably looked, maybe not quite the player he was in the Championship, but we've found form across pretty much every player on the wings this season. So it's really exciting times and good to see it's a really good signing. When you look back on it, if you're going to rate the signing of Ryan Sessegnon now, it's turning into an A+, because for the cost and for the output that we've received from him so far, I think it's a really, really good signing. For vibes alone, it was an A+. The fact that we're actually getting output is even more impressive. And look, we score the goal not long after. Yet another mistake from Liverpool. And look, this wasn't the first mistake Liverpool made. There was an early chance where Kanate, I think, overturns the ball in the box. Pereira gets taken out by the keeper, squares it to Muniz, who clashes with Van Dijk, even though Muniz just completely missed the ball, should have put that away realistically. It's another mistake, this time from Robertson, plays the ball across the box straight into Iwobi. And look, it takes a fairly big deflection, but Fulham take the lead 2-1 after 32 minutes. Dad, your thoughts there on Liverpool's mistakes I'd like to focus on a bit, because we were playing really well. But, do you think we forced those mistakes from Liverpool, or do you think they were just being a bit sloppy?
Very hard to say, but we were discussing it. Was very, very notable and very, very obvious of how many times they turned the ball over. It just gave the ball away. Surprising. I mean, I can't really explain it on any level other than to say that I think our pressing pressure disheveled them, and I think it put them off. I don't know that they would have come to Craven Cottage and thought they were going to have an easy game of it. I just don't believe that, because we've been a difficult customer for them over the last couple of years, really. They simply have not, regardless of their form, they've not had their own way with us. And so, I think it can only come down to our press. But surprising the number of times they turned the ball over. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Dave, sloppy from Liverpool?
Yeah, sloppy from Liverpool. Yeah. The first one for the penalty, Kanate had a terrible touch there. And Pereira's done a great job chasing him down. That's a real strength of his game. And he nicked the ball well. And yeah, he's knocked it, across to Muniz, and then it's been taken out by Keller. I don't understand how that's not a penalty, to be honest. Even Muniz, to an extent, has just been kind of body checked by Van Dijk. Not as clear cut, but I don't know. I felt a little bit aggrieved that we didn't get a decision, on that one. But it wasn't, as you say, the first and the only mistake Liverpool made in the afternoon. There was multiple times in that first half in their half where they were giving us the ball, multiple times. And the second goal, I'm not even sure it, particularly did come off our press, because it was just a simple ball to Robertson at left back, and he plays an absolute hospital pass across the pitch, a bit like that Pereira moment at West Ham away when he squared it to the striker. It was just a crazy ball that he played, and it went right to Iwobi, and it just put them immediately under pressure. And you just don't see Liverpool make mistakes like that. So it was sloppiness. You have to give us credit, because we were in the right places, and we were pushing and pressing at the time. But yeah, it was very strange to see Liverpool make so many kind of sloppy errors, and for once we were clinical.
It's interesting, as you say, I don't think we were pressing them that hard when Robertson made the error either. I think we were holding our structure very well, but we certainly weren't, running hard at them and really pushing them and really pressing them too hard. I was very surprised by the fact that they turned that over, and it wasn't the first time they played a ball across the box and it got cut out. And maybe we should give Marco some credit. Maybe actually that's something that he's identified that Liverpool do quite often, because it seemed to constantly fall to Iwobi sitting central. He was cutting out these crossfield passes that were just to no one effectively. So, and look, he's still got a lot of work to do. It's a good run. I think it's Muniz runs around the outside of him. And actually draws the defender slightly away. I think it's Kanate's on the outside of him. Just takes a step to just give him enough space to take the shot. It does take a wicked deflection, I'd say, off. Well, maybe not wicked, but a decent deflection off Robertson that just goes and sends it the other side of Kelleher. No chance of stopping that when it's hit with that kind of power. And look, Fulham 2-1 up, and at that point, geez, I was floating on there. I can't even imagine what it would have been like inside the stadium at that point to have turned it around that quickly. Yeah. And then it got even better, and geez, what a goal this is. It's got to be said, and it's worth pulling up a few stats. I'll try and find them, although I definitely won't be able to. I'll try and rattle them off the top of my head. It was around the aerial challenges or just in general challenges between Muniz and Van Dijk. I think Van Dijk had a 40% success rate in what are they called? Not challenges, like
Aerial
duels. Duels it is. Yeah, aerial duels with Muniz, 40%. Kanate had 50% success rate. Muniz won more aerial duels than anyone else on the pitch. He also won more fouls than anyone else on the pitch. He was superb. And the touch to take it away from Van Dijk, I know Van Dijk complains of a little nudge, as if Van Dijk's never given anyone a little nudge before. But the touch from Muniz to very purposefully take it behind him, gets away from Van Dijk, who, again, shoves Muniz multiple times to try and win the ball off him, but Muniz is too strong. Really good finish, straight through Kelleher's legs. It's a superb goal, Dave, and just proof that Muniz, I've seen a few tweets, maybe Muniz is the answer to our striking wants. Do you feel like he's starting to prove himself more and more, especially when you see the stat of which came out after the Arsenal game where he'd scored at the Emirates, the Etihad, Stamford Bridge, and I can't remember what the other ground, maybe Anfield or Old Trafford, and then he scored again against Liverpool here. He's got, I think it's 11 goals for the season now. Do you feel like he's coming into his own a little bit more?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always believed in Muniz. I was kind of blown away last year during the purple patch period, and I was a bit gutted really when he lost his place at the start of this season after a few games without a goal. And ever since, he has really been kind of second fiddle. I know he started the odd game, but he's more or less been second fiddle, and he's kind of had to make impact off the bench, which he's done incredibly well. I mean, he scored more goals off the bench than any other player in the league this season. So he's come on and been a handful. But I've just been waiting for him to kind of get a run of games from the start, because I think he can do it. I think he can be the main man and contribute with goals. And I think that, he makes himself such a presence up there. He's very kind of Mitrovic-esque. He's strong. He's, he wins his headers. He wins his aerial duels. No one gets an easy game against Muniz. No one gets an easy game. So it gives us I think it's a better target for our attack. So I've been championing that all season, and it just feels great to see kind of, Muniz kind of take the opportunity yesterday from the start. And actually, what constitutes a purple patch? Because he's scored 3 goals in his last 3 league games now. And actually he only played 1 start. So, I think he's in another purple patch at the moment. He's clearly in form. He's confident. That's why he's trying things like that flick that he did to bring the ball down, and to score that goal against, one of the world's best centre-backs. And he gave them a real tough game yesterday. His stats now are off the charts for like aerial duels one, not just yesterday, but actually across, the whole league. He's right at the top of the list. A real handful in the air. And his goals per game ratio now is just, again, as good as anyone else in the league. And racking up the goals, number 11. So look, I think he justified his place. I'm really, really delighted to see it. And I hope him and Cess actually continue to get the opportunities, because that's where the goals are coming from at the moment, so long may it continue.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And, it's an interesting one as well. Sorry, I'll ask you your question and see if maybe it is still interesting. We talked about it sort of late in the game. There was a moment where we saw Muniz draw a really smart foul where he just stepped in front of, I think it was Van Dijk, could have been Kanate, and took the contact and went down and won a free kick. It's something that you see a lot from Jimenez, being the sort of elder striker who understands the game a little bit better, understands when to take a free kick, when to win a foul, and goes down at the right times. But it's something we haven't seen from Muniz over the last couple of seasons. Do you feel like he's actually coming into his own, and not just with his goal scoring and his style of play, but the smarts seem to be there a little bit more? He seems to be actually becoming a bit more of a well-rounded striker, where he's not just chaos, which we saw last season. It was a lot of running hard, challenging hard, winning all the balls. There's a lot more smarts there this season, it feels.
Well, yes to all of that, and we talked about that when that actually happened, and he had a bit of a wry smile on his face when it happened as well. So he knew exactly what he was doing. But I have felt a bit sorry for Minis because he clearly has not won the absolute confidence of Silva yet. And maybe part of that is Silva is not entirely convinced that either Raul or Jimenez is the answer, and so he's constantly playing this game of, I've got to give both of these guys some time every week, and because Mooney's has clearly been more successful and more impactful off the bench, that kind of makes Raul a better prospect to start, which is a kind of an unfortunate disadvantage for Mooney's, even though it turns out he's probably a more flexible striker than Raul is in terms of being that squad player. But I think it's just a matter of time. If the guy keeps scoring so regularly, not only off the bench, but when you do give him a start, cometh the moment. He's got to be given a chance. And I think there's a tipping point here where you're actually asking, well, you're undermining him by not giving him enough time when he starts and allowing him to start frequently enough to give him not just confidence, but form, to allow him to actually build up a run of form. And I think that sort of referencing back to that miss against Arsenal, I think that's purely what that was. It's just not enough game time. 9 times out of 10, he's going to put that in the back of the net. And but if you're not playing regularly enough, those sort of things just can happen. So I feel a bit frustrated for Mooney's because I think many people, and I know Dave's a big fan as well, but many people who really believe that Mooney's is the answer have been frustrated by his lack of ability to break through or lack of Silva's preparedness to back him completely.
Well, yeah. Dave, I'll pose the question to you. It's a conversation that Dad and I were having on an extremely long drive the other day. We were talking about, the dynamic that Silva has with Muniz and Jimenez. They're obviously very different players in terms of the style of play. Muniz is very good aerially, wins all those duels, as we've said. Jimenez is probably the smarter striker. He's a very good and quite a clinical finisher when he gets in the right positions. But they are very different. The one thing that we've noticed is Muniz makes a very good impact off the bench. Jimenez, much less so. And we saw it on the weekend. Jimenez subbed on for Muniz. I didn't think that was the right decision for the way the game was flowing on the weekend. I thought Muniz was causing a lot of issues for the Liverpool defence, and Liverpool basically went to a 2 at the back at the end of the game. And I think having Muniz up top would have made a big difference. But do we feel like potentially Jimenez gets more of the start because Muniz is so impactful off the bench? And actually that sort of, as Dad sort of said, hinders Muniz's ability to get minutes because Muniz is a great impact player to have at your disposal. Whereas if you're down in a game and chasing a goal, bringing Jimenez off the bench, we often see him come on as like a 2 up front, which we sort of switch to sometimes when we're chasing a goal. It's almost like you can't take off Muniz as well if you're looking for a goal. Do you think that's actually impacting on Muniz's ability to get a run of games because he's so good off the bench?
I think, I think that's certainly part of it. I think that Raul gives us something in his build-up play. He works very hard. He drops in. He helps link up play. But my concern with that is often it leaves us kind of a player short in the box, and we don't seem to get as many opportunities because Raul's linking up play on the wings and dropping deep.
100%.
Whereas Muniz is a lot more kind of typical number 9, quite direct, always a target. And I think Silva's liked Raul's performances, and I think we all have. We've all been kind of impressed with Raul's general play this season, but I think Muniz has had to be patient because of that. But now that he's confident and scoring goals, there's just no way that he can be kind of left out at the moment, unless it's kind of rotation for fitness. I really agree that the substitution yesterday made no sense, and that's no slight on Raul, but it just wasn't the game to bring Raul on in. As you said, Liverpool had gone to pretty much playing two at the back, and one of them was Gravenbach. You know, they'd taken off Canate, I believe, and we needed the Muniz's presence and his physicality to kind of hold the ball up. And when he came off, we lost that, and poor old Raul was just kind of, you know, chasing shadows. So it was just a very strange substitution. I thought that, and I thought the ESR one wasn't a great substitution either, because I think we lost a bit of Pereira's energy when ESR came on too. You did mention that he gave away a professional foul, which was good, but generally I didn't think the subs helped us.
Only positive.
Yeah, I just didn't think the subs helped us. I thought it made it kind of we lost our threat in the final third, and it just Liverpool started having more opportunities. But back to the original point, I think Muniz has just had to be patient because of Raul's been playing well in the build-up play, and Silva's admired that higher than, I suppose, what a non-prolific Muniz was offering him maybe a bit earlier in the season. But now Muniz is banging him in. He's got no choice. He's got to play the man that's scoring goals and causing havoc for opposition defences.
Well, remembering too that Jimenez in just 2 weeks ago in the international break scored 4 goals in 2 games. So it does make sense that Jimenez was basically the form striker. He was in good nick. He was scoring goals and really performing out of his skin. Admittedly, against Canada and Panama, it's not exactly the toughest games, but still, as a striker, if you're putting the ball in the back of the net, there's confidence. It is understandable that he got that run. I just hope that Marco sticks with Muniz now, especially when you get into those games where you need a physical striker. Jimenez gets into good positions and wins the ball and makes good touches, but when you want someone to just be challenging hard, and I think we need that against Bournemouth, you want a player who's basically just going to run and put their body into the defenders constantly and win all of those aerial duels, get those little flick-ons. He's releasing Cess and Iwobi constantly on the weekend and just causing havoc, which is what you want from a striker, especially a young striker like Muniz. And look, going in at half-time, 3-1 up, it's not something you expect. I think the stat was it's the first time that Liverpool had scored first and then conceded 3 goals in the history of the Premier League. So there's a good stat for us. Liverpool, with a 2-goal cushion over Liverpool, you do feel like you should be able to hold out, but it was always going to happen that Liverpool were going to sneak a goal. They put pressure on us. They came out a lot better in the second half. I still think we actually held our own really well, but Luis Diaz scores the second goal for Liverpool and makes the end of the game just a little bit stressful. But this is a time to probably talk about the defence. I have to say, Fulham's defence across the whole of yesterday was really impressive. I know we've bagged out Anderson a bit over the last couple of weeks for some of his passing and his defending. Castagna has looked a little bit... Yeah, I haven't been on the podcast for a while, so you can't point fingers at me, but there's definitely some people who have. Castagna has copped a fair bit recently, and I'd say he's probably a little bit unlucky because he's had to pick up a lot of slack because of Kenny Tete's injury and a pretty tough run of games as well, but he had a really good game against Cody Gakpo, who tore us to shreds last time he played against him, and is a really... I'd say a better player than Martinelli, who made Castagna look very average against us, Arsenal. So Castagna really stepped up. Robinson pocketed Salah. Salah was, very, very quiet for a player who is absolutely dominating the Premier League this season. He was kept very, very quiet for the whole day. And Bassi, for me, I know he's been given man of the match by Fulham. He didn't get it. The official man of the match went to Muniz, but Calvin Bassi, I thought, was absolutely outstanding, and he has really come on leaps and bounds this season and looks a superb signing. And that partnership of Anderson and Bassi, as they continue to understand each other and play more together, that's a really exciting centre-back partnership. Calvin Bassi, especially, I think, was probably my favourite player yesterday. He just looked so assured in possession. Anytime Liverpool got the ball and were sort of close to him, he just closed it down, and it's just another really great performance from Calvin Bassey.
There was a really interesting moment in the game where Kavanagh was doing his bit, just being a bit of a dick and giving us nothing. And Calvin Bassey is absolutely doing it for fun at the moment. And, he was in a 50-50 duel, it didn't go his way. And he just sort of laughed it off as if to say, it's fine. I'll have plenty of this for the rest of the day. His confidence at the moment is sky high. He's so physical. He's, happy to actually make runs and carry the ball up the field. He is everything we could have wished for in a really, really young and impressive centre back to replace Tim Ream. When you think about it, in terms of Anderson, firstly, props to Castagno. I thought he had a really good game. It confuses me somewhat that Martinelli absolutely, tore him to shreds, and yet he had, arguably so much a tougher character to defend against, and he seemed to have a better game than he's had for a month, if not longer. And funnily enough, Anderson has a good game when Castagno has a better game, and just to sprinkle a little bit of icing on the cake, how good did Kenny Tete look when he came on? We didn't see much of it, but geez, I've missed him. I've missed him really so much.
Yeah. And Dave, for a player coming back from injury, well, I think when Tete got injured last season, and they were mentioning it on, I can't remember if it was in the Discord actually, or it could have been the actual commentary for the game, but when Tete came back from injury last time around, he looked really slow and off the boil, and it took him a long time to get back to full fitness and took him a long time to kind of look like he belonged. Came off the bench yesterday, and I was hopeful that we'd see a good performance for him, but I didn't expect him to play as well as he actually did. I know it was a short cameo in the scheme of things, but he looked like he'd been there the whole season. He didn't look like a player coming back from injury. He looked sharp. He was in the right positions constantly. It was really pleasing to see a good performance from Tete off the bench. Do you feel like now that he's had a couple of minutes under his belt, we might see him get another substitute appearance against Bournemouth, and then maybe there's going to be a bit more rotation at right back for the end of the season, the last sort of 5 or 6 games?
That's an interesting question. Yes, I mean, Return of the King. He was fantastic when he came on. It was the only sub I thought that really kind of worked yesterday. I thought the attacking subs kind of killed our attacking emphasis, but the defensive one worked really well. Tete tucked it into a back three, really, didn't he? He was kind of playing like right centre back. They pushed Castagno forward, and there's Kenny. He's a great defender. He's a top level defender, and it really does look like we're going to lose him in the summer, which is a huge blow. I do wonder if him being on the bench is what led to Castagno's game raising.
I think you said that
I was a little bit less. A lot of people have kind of said, "Oh, Castagno's knackered." He's played a lot of games, and I kind of see that, but he played pretty much every game last season. There's only a handful of games that Tete played, with the cup ones, I believe, and the odds here or there. I was less kind of, and I think there's a lot of players like Robinson seems to play every game. So I wasn't giving him the same kind of, I wasn't really letting him have that excuse, Castagno. I just think his form's been poor, and he's, found himself kind of getting, as Elton said, kind of skinned by wingers quite consistently. And I think that was hurting Anderson's game, both from a defensive standpoint and from a passing standpoint, because I just think he was just kind of less confident about having time on the ball. But brilliant performance by him yesterday. He was excellent. And as Elton said, Anderson really stepped up too. I think Bassey and Robinson kind of get their flowers a lot, and they deserve them. But those two in particular have come under a lot of criticism. And to see them kind of perform the way they did yesterday was fantastic. And now we've got Kenny back. It's going to be interesting to see how Silva manages that. He's got two kind of top quality players, and one of them's been holding the position for some time. But yeah, if Kenny's back to full fitness and playing well, he should get the position back, in my opinion. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah,
well, I think what's
Steve's
also interesting
posed a question
is
to us on
in the conversation about talking about our defenders. We haven't even mentioned Robinson. He didn't have a bad game. He actually did some very, very good things yesterday, and yet I think Bassey. It was hard to look past Bassey, wasn't it? He was just immense. And the other little interesting point about yesterday is that imagine beating Liverpool and not even needing Willian.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of players left out effectively, a lot of changes, and it was a good all-round team performance. So what I was going to say is, just to sort of round out the game, a couple more talking points. The first, how the sigh of relief from me especially, but I'm sure within the whole stadium, when Harvey Elliott curled one that hit the underside of the crossbar. If that had gone in, that would have just been absolutely sickening to have dominated a game and really deserved all 3 points. Glad that one didn't go in, and also really enjoyed seeing him put it to literally the back of the Putney end when he was trying to curl one to the top corner as well. But the final thing to just sort of say, we've pretty much named every single player on the field and praised them. Bernd Leno had a very good game. He made a lot of solid saves. There was nothing that was too out there and too sort of, any high-flying saves that he had to make. I'd say Kelleher, in fact, had to make a couple of extra saves that would have had us in the game. Harrison Reed had that late shot on goal, and he did well to tip that around the post. But Bernd Leno, just solid throughout. A lot of very good saves. We'll have a quick look at the stats here. Liverpool had 6 shots on target. Leno dealt with 4 of those very, very comfortably. And, in terms of possession, we did expect Liverpool to have more possession throughout the game, 62 to 38. In terms of passes, Fulham were not that far behind, 337 to 556. So I think from memory in the Palace game where we dominated possession in that one, Palace didn't even make 200 passes for the game. So we definitely... It wasn't one of those games where we just hit them on the counter-attack. We were in this game fairly well, and a similar number of fouls, 10 fouls from Fulham to 9 for Liverpool. A question from our live stream on YouTube. Steve Reynolds asks, if we have 10 seconds, can we discuss ESR? It's going to take more than 10 seconds for sure, but I will definitely throw this out. And I'll throw to you first, Dave. Smith Rowe is sort of fading towards the end of the season. Not that he was ever shining. Well, he's shone bright, I'd say, at the very start of the season. We saw glimpses. Do we feel like... it's a really tough one. I like the idea of Smith Rowe, but it's just not coming off at the moment. One thing that I do try and consider and sort of keep in the back pocket is look at someone like Sasa Lukic. The first season he had under Marco Silva was poor. I remember saying we just need to get rid of him. Think of there are a number of other players as well who just didn't click until their second season under Marco. And so I want to give Smith Rowe more time. But Dave, with the price tag that he came with and the performances that we've seen, do you think he's got that time? And do you think he has that allowance to be able to wait till next season? Or do you feel like come the end of the season, will Fulham potentially be looking at cutting their losses?
Well, on that last point, I don't think we can really, because we wouldn't probably get that price for him that we paid. So he would be... it would be a net loss if we were to sell him. And to be honest, we've given him a big contract too. So I think he's here for the long term. And you're right, his performances have kind of dwindled as the season's gone on. And Lukic is a great comparison. He very much looks like kind of Lukic last season, just kind of ineffective, not really impacting the game. Playing, his pass completion rate is probably quite high, but it's all kind of simple, basic passes, isn't it? It's that he's not stretching defenses. He's not running at players like we know he can. I think we're seeing a player who's kind of low on confidence, and yeah, I'd like to think that, giving him a go after him having a full pre-season, this summer with us, we might see a better player emerge next season, much like we did with Lukic. I still think Smith Rowe's a left midfielder. I don't think that, when you look back actually on his best years at Arsenal, they all came from the left when he had those years where he was scoring goals and in part of their first team. And I just think in the 10, he's getting a bit lost. And I think there are other options that we're certainly ahead of him at the moment. So, that's the way I see it.
Dad, your thoughts?
Well, my overarching thoughts is I'm mighty disappointed. So far, it's a massive fail, and I'm try not to be personal about it because I'm not just screaming from the bleachers, but it's just an awful disappointment. He's given us almost nothing. I don't think I'm being too harsh if I'm thinking about actual facts and performances and output. It's funny, isn't it, though, because maybe similar to Sasa Lukic, Marco had a certain view of where he thought Sasa Lukic should be playing. Maybe he just never fitted that well in terms of chemistry with João Palhinha. He seems to have found a much better chemistry with Sander Berge, and that's working really well for us. I mean, when those two are actually in decent form, but they look capable of dealing with anybody. Funnily enough, Marco seems absolutely convinced that ESR is a number 10. And the problem is that if Pereira was having a really blistering season, then I think it would have been even tougher for ESR to make his mark at 10. And I wonder whether, I guess this is a confidence thing, whether he's just not a man who likes fighting for his position.
Yeah, it might be a little harsh to say that he doesn't want to fight for his position. I think he's probably just struggled for form, and I think.
But he is fighting for. But he is having to fight for his position.
No. Well, I think he's having to fight for his position because we've had other players actually performing out of their skin when they come off the bench. You look at, as Dave says, I agree. I think maybe he's more of a left-sided player, and I think we saw Marco try that a little bit against Arsenal when he sort of started out on the left. I think the problem is on the left, he's sitting behind Iwobi, who's having a brilliant season, although he's sort of fading a little bit now as well. Willian, who is looking pretty sharp straight away. Cess is also now obviously a naturally left-sided player, although Marco does like people cutting in from the other side. Adama can play on left or right. Wilson was in great form. Like he's sitting behind a lot of very informed players for that left wing spot, and so he's having to fight for it. But he's fighting in a kind of a losing battle against really informed players.
Yeah, he is. It's a real predicament, but I think we've got enough players at the moment that are in good form and we it's not just AP who had a pretty good game yesterday. There were moments I thought he was sloppy, but generally I thought his work rate was really strong. But we do have other players that can play in the 10. We've got Alex Iwobi, we've got Harry Wilson when he comes back. Really like Harry Wilson in the 10. I'd like to see that more when he gets back to full fitness because,
Josh King.
Josh King. I mean, where is the forgotten man? Where is he? Nobody knows. But he's certainly an exciting prospect for that position too. So, I don't think at the moment, we're 8th in the league. We're pushing Europe, and that's without Smith Rowe at his best. So it's not like a huge concern, but I think if he doesn't come out the blocks next season and start showing like a higher level of performance on a more consistent basis, then we really will be asking questions. But I think there's still a little bit of, well, this is the first year he's been back playing. He had 2 years out really through injuries and not being selected or whatever the situation was at Arsenal. Maybe it just takes time, as we've seen with other players in the past. And I think alarm bells aren't quite ringing yet, but I think they will be next season, especially if we get to this stage next season and we're still seeing the same kind of performances.
Yeah, I agree, Dave.
Yeah. Look, I think I would have to agree with that. We have to start seeing a turn up in performances. If it continues at this level, we probably just going to have to cut our losses at some point, and Smith Rowe probably goes to a newly promoted side in the January or something along those lines. But I think realistically, we're at the point now where Europe's a genuine possibility, and actually, if we get results in the next couple of games against Bournemouth and Chelsea, I'd say it almost locks us in for Europe, because we should be getting enough points before the end of the season to solidify that 8th spot, which I think will be enough for Europe this season. But Smith Rowe, if you're in Europe, Smith Rowe has to give you more, and I'm happy to wait until maybe 10 games into next season to fully pass judgment, but I wouldn't be giving
generous.
any more time than that. Well, I think you have to. If I remember on this podcast doing a post-season and a pre-season review and saying we should just cut our losses on Sasa Lukic because he's not good enough and he's not performing. Every time he comes off the bench, he's poor. Every time he starts, he's poor. And a lot of that was down to the fact that he was playing alongside Polina, and we didn't realise until Polina left that Lukic needed a different partner. And maybe there's something in that with Smith Rowe as well. And we won't be able to see it until Marco in the off-season goes, actually what Smith Rowe needs is X. Put that next to Smith Rowe, and all of a sudden he turns into a completely different player and finds that form.
One thing you could not say about Sasa Lukic last season when he wasn't performing to our expectations, you could not say that he wasn't trying hard or that he was looking to hide.
Yeah, that's
or that
fair.
he was he was passing the ball back a lot. That is true, but he didn't have that look that he was trying to hide, and I hate to say it, but that's what I see in Smith Rowe.
Yeah,
he probably didn't have the weight of expectation that Smith
Steve
Rowe
wants
has
me to use
either,
the L word, but I'm not sure if it's lazy or it's just supremely underconfident. And I'm sorry, that's a huge problem for Marco. But if he can't solve the problem, we've got to do something about it, and it's called the scalpel.
Yeah, it's a different situation to Lukic, though. Lukic came in January. We didn't expect anything really in that first 6 months. The next 12 months he was fairly average as well, I'd say. And then all of a sudden came into his own and it looks, first name on the team sheet. I think, he was signed for a much lower fee. He wasn't a known entity. You look at someone like Smith Rowe, there's a weight of expectation there with Smith Rowe where he's expected to lead the charge and be our best player. And I think when it's not happening for you and you've got that expectation behind you, it makes it really tough to be able to turn your form around. He should be turning his form around, but I think the situation's different, and I would like to give him more time to hope that we do see a different Smith Rowe next season. Maybe he needs an off-season to just clear his head and go, right, first season at Fulham out the way, let's build. We're making Europe this year. We're pushing on. We're going to be a really good top half team, signing a couple of extra players to really lift the entire squad to the levels that we want. And that's the catalyst for Smith Rowe to actually become the Smith Rowe that was playing for England and touted as the next big thing. So I'm hopeful we can get there eventually, but there's a fair way to go, I'd say.
He
let's
just
have a
needs
quick
to
look at
take
the
more
table
risks.
before we finish off. Go on, Dave. Yeah, sorry.
He needs
I
to take
agree.
more
Go on.
risks. He plays the simple ball too often. He needs to run at players. He needs to try and put the ball forward in behind. He needs to do that a little bit more. He just doesn't seem to want to do that. It's really strange. But yeah, we know there's a player there. He's still got 5 league goals this season. But it sounds. Yeah. He's not been completely useless. He's chipped in with some important goals, but he just doesn't take enough risks. And I just think that's what we'd like to see from him.
Agree. Good point made. quick look at the table. Fulham sitting in 8th. We have a decent little buffer now as well. Well, not a huge buffer, but still a good one, sitting on 48 points. Brighton behind us on 47. Bournemouth on 45. Palace on 43 and 11th. Brentford on 42 and 12th. It's nice to see a 10-point buffer over Man United at this point of the season. But the main thing, looking up the table, you look at Man City after their draw last night. Fulham just 4 points behind 5th place, which will be enough for Champions League football this season. A win against Bournemouth and then a win against Chelsea after that would actually potentially see us leapfrog Chelsea, depending on their other results. And obviously, Villa have the Champions League to still consider. Newcastle have a couple of games in hand, so expect them to jump up the table a little bit more. But it's positive at the moment for Fulham. We've got a couple of tough games to come still, but look, we're in a really good spot at the moment, and the run-in is not actually terrible for us, especially when you look at the results like the ones we've had against Arsenal and Liverpool. We can pull off these big results against these big teams, so there's a lot to be positive about. Guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. It was just like I'm still sitting on a cloud after this game. I wasn't expecting it, and to come out of it with such a good result, not just the result, but the performance as well. Like we've all said, no one had a bad game across the board. It was really, really enjoyable to watch. A really strong attacking performance, a really strong defensive performance. It was an all-round Marco Silva masterclass, and what a day out, Dave. I'm sure that hangover is well worth it.
Yes,
I saw a couple of those baby Guinnesses being handed around.
Oh, I had to do the baby Guinnesses. Fulham Boston inspired me. And on that note, we've got Mike coming on after dark on Thursday. So yeah, it would be great to catch up with him. But yeah, it was a magical afternoon. Brilliant kind of result for us with that spell, that 15-minute spell. We were just scintillating and, so enjoyable in the stadium. Atmosphere was great. So yeah, loved it. Had a great day. Enjoyed it after too. I was with our friend Scouse, who was in the Liverpool end, and we met up with him after the game and gave him dog's abuse. So that was a lot of fun. And it's also, it's great, by the way, to be back looking at your two happy faces after a win. It's been a while since we've been on this show and on the post game review, and it's just great to be back, and especially, as I said, after such a great result.
Absolutely, and thank you for joining us today, Dave. It was great to see your smiling face as well, even though slightly hungover, but still good to see. Cheers for joining us, Dave, and I assume you'll be on After Dark later this week as well?
Yeah, 8 p.m. on UK time on Thursday. And yeah, we're looking forward to the show. As I said, Mike from Boston. So we'll be looking ahead to the Bournemouth game and picking the bones out of that one. And we'll touch on the Liverpool one again. Everyone will want to enjoy the moment. So it's going to be a fun show.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. And Dad, thanks for joining tonight. A few internet problems, which are always the bane of our existence, but we managed to get through.
Yeah, more than just a few internet problems, but never mind. I'll enjoy listening back to it tomorrow to hear what half of what Dave said and 3/4 of what you said, Jack. But I turned my camera off to save a few bits down the line, but it allowed me to focus more on Dave fighting that midday sort of crashing hangover, and just absolutely try to get himself through it. I enjoyed that. Good to see your face, David.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Saw a couple of yawns, fighting hard against a few of those yawns. I think you need to lie down at lunch, Dave.
There's no time, there's no rest. Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who joined us on the live stream today. As Dave mentioned at the very top, we live streamed this one on Facebook, YouTube, X, and Instagram for the first time. Please do make sure you follow us on all of those platforms. You can also check us out on Discord. You'll find links in all of our bios. Jump into the Discord. It's a great place to follow the game live. It's also just a great place to talk all things Fulham all the time. That place is absolutely buzzing after the result yesterday. It was great to see everyone being able to enjoy it together. A big thanks to everyone who's joined us on the live stream as well. Lots of great questions coming in, lots of great comments as well. We really do appreciate the support. Thank you, everyone, as always, and come on, you Whites.